G'day guys, Ben and Simon here and welcome to another episode of the Pumped on Property Show. Now in today's episode, we're actually going to answer the question, how to build a property portfolio and retire on over $2,000 a week. So in this episode, we talk about two very different ideas to go from where someone is today to at least 100K or $2,000 a week of passive income. But we also get into like 6 steps, which sort of just came out of nowhere when we were filming this to sort of get from where you are to where you need to be in a safe, secure, but efficient way.
And what I love about this one is we talk about an idea and we share a strategy that we haven't talked about. Now, obviously, the strategy fundamentals are the same as what we've talked about in the past, but the markets, the purchase prices, the build prices are extremely different. So finally, a new way to do the same thing, which gets me super excited.
Yeah, I think we worked out like that we're sitting at about a 500 to 600K saving on doing a similar strategy that we would have been talking about in December with this new market and this new opportunity. So one of the questions that I was sort of trying to figure out when I was 24 to 30 and just getting started as an investor was, how do I actually build a portfolio with the least amount of risk, the least amount of debt, the least amount of pain, because property has a pretty good element of pain in it as well.
Oh, yeah.
To get to financial freedom in a reasonable period of time. Now, my time frame was always 15 years. So I've been investing since I was 24, I'm 39, and I've sort of been able to get at least my basic living costs and like a little bit of lifestyle covered now. But there's a couple of different ways that you can do this, and there's 2 that we really, really like. So what's your personal preference out of these ideas with everything that you know now? Like, where did you want to start?
Well, my personal preference is always the path of least resistance.
Yep.
You know, you've known me for 32, almost 33 years now. I always try and figure out how to avoid the pain. How can I just get from A to B with the path of least resistance? So for me, it's a 2 properties to financial freedom strategy because it's less properties, it's less amount of money that I need to spend, and it still gets me the cash flow goal that I want at the end of the day. Now, I think $2,000 per week or $100,000 per year is a great place for most investors to start because that will cover the vast majority of your living costs. It may not cost for the finer things in life, like an upgrading new car or flying business class on an overseas trip or something like that, but it's definitely going to pay the bills, you know, put good food on the table, keep the roof over your head, you know, allow you to send kids to a decent public school and, you know, consider yourself financially free.
And there's different people listening to this. And then within that, there's different life stages. So an example, there could be first timers, there could be absolute ballers with 10, 20 properties listening to this. There could also be people that are single, people with a partner, people that are closer to retirement, or people like myself and yourself that are in the family stage. And so in the family stage, your costs blow way out. But what this strategy safeguards is like never landing on the pension as your only choice. So it's kind of like once the kids are out of the house, once you've got your own dream home or nice home paid off, owned outright, you know, once you've sort of had time in the game to sort of save some, like stack some money in super or put some savings away or invest in some stocks or crypto or gold or, you know, whatever your sort of pain/pleasure is, you're going to be cool down the line.
Yeah, and I feel as though you've dealt with a lot of pain and, you know, maybe wish that you landed on this a little while ago because obviously you've had to repurpose your portfolio that's more in alignment with what you believe in, what you value now. So like, what's your personal preference leaning towards these days after 15 years of investing?
You know, simple fundamentals. So fundamentals being metro or major regional markets, close to the city, close to the beach, quality suburbs, undervalued suburbs, quality streets, quiet streets, big blocks of land, houses that are super tenant ready, good quality bones like slab, tile, brick on, you know, what am I saying? Slab, tile, brick on ground.
It's so funny. You're not asking for much, eh? It's like, oh, just the fundamentals, blah, 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 blah.
And then I want to get timing, capital growth, cash flow, tax benefits, and make money on the way in. And it's like, that's all I'm asking for. Is there anything wrong with that?
It definitely doesn't start like that, but that's how, you know, we've landed after so many years of experience. And I think we were talking this morning off camera about just these fundamentals in life and how good it is to have your fundamental foundations, your cornerstones of anything that you're doing in life, so that when life knocks you off course, you can just course correct really quickly and just jump back onto what works. And it's like thinking about this every single day of every single week, of every single month, of every single year for 15 or 20 years straight now, we've developed the process. And the process
Our poor
works.
brains.
Our poor brains, eh?
Yeah.
That's what my wife says all the time. It's like, I just do not want to live up there.
No.
Like, thankfully you don't have to, and I need you to bring me back down
Get
to
me
earth.
back into the moment, babe. There's a few things that can help. But yeah, I think like I agree with you. Like I think, you know, so if I was just starting back out now with everything that I've learnt, my preference would be the same as yours. The path of least resistance, 2 houses. Now, if we had recorded this video last week, or this potty last week, it would be 500 to 600 grand more expensive to execute this strategy, because there was only one market in Australia where it worked, and that was Brisbane. But our town planner, after you were speaking to her, said that the Victorian government has just stepped in and now allowed this strategy to be something you can do in Victoria. That's Geelong, Bendigo, Ballarat, Melbourne, statewide. And as long as you tick the 30 boxes they want you to tick.
There's a lot of boxes, a lot of red tape for it. And, you know,
It's the Victorian way. They like a box.
To be honest, I like it as well, because I look at the way that they've forced us to build these granny flats, and it's the way that we've always built granny flats. It's functional. It's
Quality.
a great site plan. It's not on small blocks of land. It's not like we're squeezing multiple houses into a tiny little block. You've got to functionally create a really beautiful setup. And I'm just like, looking at the way that they're presented, I'm like, well, that's how we've always done it. And I'm glad that they're forcing others to do it, because it makes it desirable.
Yeah, so this example, like this idea one strategy, which we call 2 properties to financial freedom, is effectively going into Victoria while no one else in Australia is looking at it.
I remember when we used to talk about this video like 3-4 years ago, where it was 500k in Brisbane, and it's like,
Now it's 750 to 8 minimum.
now it's 750 to 8, but Melbourne's so undervalued right now in some of these suburbs where you can still buy these sites for 500k.
Is it though? Because I thought Melbourne was expensive.
Yeah, I know,
Like
right?
this is like the
Stigma.
belief, you know, and I appreciate your mum listening to this and the 3 other people that are out there having a laugh about this now. But just because you know listening to this, guys, and we know, doesn't mean that the cat's out of the bag. You know, in fact, it took us 3 months to even find information on this with a planner looking for it in Victoria. Like it's hard to find.
Yep.
Because it's probably not that publicly kosher down there to, like, you know, like it wasn't in Sydney 15 years ago, and like it wasn't in Brisbane 8 years ago.
And there's stuff all investors down there right now. It's been a market that people have been running away from, and since Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane have all been on such a great run of property price growth, people haven't been thinking about it, they haven't been talking about it, so it just hasn't been on people's radar. And
what I've said before is that generally you don't get a run in any city or regional market in Oz until you see 10% growth in that year citywide. And so Melbourne's still a while off. Like according to SQM this year, it could be as much as -6 to +6% roughly. SQM research, that is, predictions wise. So who knows which way it's going to land. But right now, the market looks like it's going down. But I've watched vacancy rates go from 6% to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2. A lot of the suburbs now are below 1%, which means that all of that supply of the people that left Australia and left the city in COVID has now been absorbed. But people just aren't building, because to build in Melbourne is fucking expensive, because people just want big money and there's not enough tradies down there. And so this strategy is simple. It's like, go buy a good house on a 600 plus square metre block with a nice 15 metre wide frontage with the house at the front of the block for 500k that rents for $420 a week. And then I don't know 100% yet, because I haven't put my own money through it, but I will, on what a granny flat's going to cost. But I'm assuming it's going to be more expensive than Brisbane. So I'm just saying 250 grand to build a 60 square metre granny flat down there.
The reason that it should be that number as well is because you have to do a few additional extras as well. You know, you can't...
The nice courtyard, the garden.
That's right. And you really need some functional side access as well. So if your property's super wide and there's no side access, then it's just not going to get approved as well. So, you know, talking to the team and after having a look at a few properties, you know, only a small percentage of properties that we analyze actually have the capacity to make this happen. And, you know, we'll obviously get to what the true numbers represent, but it's always good to set expectations based on the worst case scenario. And, you know, 250 seems like worst case scenario.
You know, I haven't gone in and hammered a builder yet to get the price down wholesale. So that will come.
Exactly.
And then I'm assuming, based on comps, that you're going to get at least, depending on the suburb, 300 a week.
Yep.
Like you used to in Brisbane in 2022. Upwards of 450 a week on an average home. But then in Brisbane now, some of these things are renting out for 450 to 520 in like the cheaper suburbs in the city, and a lot more than that in the more expensive
I went
ones.
and inspected one in Eagleby, and Eagleby is
32k South Brisbane.
and not the most affluent area, and it was literally right next to the Bruce Highway. Like, you could hear the trucks the whole day, and they that was going for $520 per week.
And you're getting your 200, sometimes $300 a week of tax benefits on it too.
But because Melbourne's sort of been in a bit of a downward spiral, it is actually the most affordable capital city in Australia to rent in right now. So the rental yields are a little bit lower, which is why I love this option as an investment down there, because you can still get above that 5% rental yield, which is significantly above average for the Australian average, but also the Melbourne market.
So what I've realised from looking at 523 odd suburbs in Melbourne recently, across a bunch of indicators that are important to you and I, is there's actually two Melbournes. And we've talked about being two Brisbanes for a long time. There's the part of Melbourne that has exploded post-COVID, pre-COVID, and since the last GFC. And that is the central part of Melbourne is so expensive. It's relative to Sydney. And you're talking big money. And then there's East Melbourne, which has gone ballistic. And then there's some of the beaches running through East Melbourne to the Mornington Peninsula. Like, I was down in Sorrento, Portsea last year. The most beautiful places I think I've almost ever gone through. And so I just put all of Melbourne in that category. Well, St Kilda's expensive. Portsea's, I saw a joint there for 22 mil. It looked like a 600 square metre block on the beach to me. And I'm like, I don't get it. But I never looked at North Melbourne. I never looked at the suburbs just a little bit further, like 8 to sort of 15 k's from the city. I never looked at Southwest Melbourne or West Melbourne. And I'm not saying that these are the areas that people are just going to be like, yes, I just can't wait to own deep West Melbourne, because the locals are like, it's West Melbourne. And that goes through the forums and it goes through all that stuff. But it's like, I heard the same thing about central Brisbane, and then it doubled. And then the eastern beaches that were shitholes in Brisbane tripled. And then we went to the northern beaches and they doubled or tripled. Then we went to 20k or 10k's from the city in North Brisbane, 20k's, 40k's, and then South Brisbane popped up, and then Ipswich, West Brisbane popped up, and all of a sudden a suburb 40k's from the city is now 600k.
And there's always going to be somebody there that wants to beat on you, that just wants to pull you down, drag you down to their level, and they're going to give you reasons why not to do something. But for us, these key performance indicators that we look at and cross-reference against different suburbs have enabled us to time markets within markets extremely well. And if you don't have an emotional attachment to an area because you grew up there, or you had a friend that grew up there, or whatever it might be, you know, you're just making that decision based on the data, based on logic, based on history, and that enables you to get a better return on your investment. And it's like, you know, I may not personally see myself, I'm a surfer that loves to live by the beach. Like, I can't see myself
Hit
living
the
in
wave
West
pool, bro.
Melbourne. Yeah, I could do that. But it doesn't matter, because I want to invest there. And then there was this incredible ABC article that came out recently where they were talking about the Australian housing market, and they went to this suburb in southwest Melbourne called Tarneit, which is like a tiny town. It's like Kellyville in Sydney. It's like Narangba in Brisbane. Now. Exactly. And it's like, you go there and there's, you know, 10, 20, 30 people going on these inspection tours with the developers to try and figure it out. A lot of new immigrants, skilled workers that have moved to the country and want to lay their foundations and you know, build a home for their family. And you know, it's such a good article, or such a good documentary to watch, because it just helps you understand that just because some Australians don't think that these places are the most desirable places to live,
Doesn't mean that
comparing it to a Brighton or a St Kilda or a North Melbourne or whatever it might be. But a lot of these people that are coming from other markets around the world
that are earning 200 a year combined.
Massive money and willing to work their asses off to have this beautiful country be their home. It's like they're super proud. And I remember when we first started going to, Acacia Ridge or you first start going down to Logan or out to Ipswich, and it's like you hear the chatter on the forums, but then you go there and you meet a local that lives in that suburb and you chat to that
Super
local.
house proud, man.
Love the area.
Like we
love
were,
the
like
community.
we grew up in South Sydney, 32 to 34 k's in city, 90k houses, 70% houses. Now it's 90% owner occupied, probably. I don't know the stat. It's probably 70, 80% with the units they've built. 1.3 to 2 million bucks for anything half decent. And it's an incredible lifestyle. And it's like, we always felt that way about it growing up there. Like, I loved it there. I still go back and I'm like, this is a vibe.
100%. One of our colleagues has just moved back there.
Yeah, one of the dudes has chosen to live there and he's got the most beautiful joint.
Oh, so nice.
And so what I've learned and what I've gotten more, I'm doing some coaching at the moment with the dude called Nam, who's phenomenal, right? And what I've learnt, right, is we all have a predisposition around our beliefs, our fears, our attachments, and the way that we grew up. This area is good. That car company's great. That one's cheap. That one's premium. And then that cheap one Kia becomes better than like Toyota in terms of like quality and safety, and Volvo becomes worse than like Hyundai.
Shoe brands, surfboards, board shorts, everything, right?
And so what I'm learning is from this coaching that I'm doing is like to trust your inner voice and then to back it up with logic. And the logic is, in the last 30 years, Melbourne prices have generally been within about 30% of Sydney. And right now they're 60% cheaper. And in the middle ring suburbs, I think they're between 80 to 85% cheaper. So we're not encouraging anyone to go rush into Melbourne and get the place that's already tripled since the last GFC. But if you know where to, like there's 18 suburbs that we really like, or 23 now. If you know where to find them, there is gold in that market that will be fully uncovered by everyone within 10 years. So coming back to the idea, we got one 500k house and we built a 250 grand granny flat. The house rents for 420, the granny flat rents for 350. These are the worst numbers that you'll get. I think you'll save money on everything there except maybe the purchase price. 500 is absolute basement buying. A lot of people we work with will want to spend 600 to 650 because they'll want 4-bed, 2-bath, brick and tile and a much nicer home. If that was me, I'd spend more. But that same thing that's worth 500 in Brisbane right now would be 750. In Sydney, it would be 1.3. In the other parts of the city of Melbourne, it would be 1.1. And so we're picking the eyes out of the market. And then all we do is we add another one. We do the exact same house for 500, granny flat for 250, rents for 420 and 350 a week. So we end up on the completion of that. Now, one person might just be able to afford a house this year, and in a few years build a granny flat, and 5 years after that get another home and another granny. There's other people that we work with that are like, man, I can do 2 houses and 2 granny flats in the next 6 months.
Exactly.
And it's like, well, the build will take 9 months.
Yeah.
But theoretically, you know what I mean?
Yep.
You end up with 1.5 mil of property, 1,540 bucks a week of rent that goes for 50 weeks a year. So 77 grand today. And in 15 years' time, with inflation and compounding growth, the houses going from 1.5 mil will go up by 5% a year to over 3,100,000. And we want you to be debt-free on that. And you'll have 111,000 bucks a year of rent coming in at 2.5% growth on the rent per year. And that's it. Like, there's your 2 grand a week, 2 houses, 2 granny flats. You've timed the Melbourne market. You've got into the undervalued suburb. You're getting cash flow. You're getting monster tax benefits while the Australian government still gives them. And you've got 4 incomes instead of 2. So you've halved your risk, literally.
And I love it. I think it's a really simple option, but it's not the only option. Obviously, there's so many ways that we can do this. And whilst we don't want to necessarily invest with our emotion, I feel as though it's important to invest with 3 things in mind. Number one is a goal alignment. So ensuring that whatever investment strategy you're implementing is getting you from A to B.
Yep.
Making sure that that is in alignment with your lifestyle as well. For example, if you're a lifestyle person, you don't want to be holding a significantly negatively geared portfolio.
Yeah.
Or if you're a baller, maybe you do because you want those tax benefits.
I don't like losing money even as a baller to like hopefully save 30 cents on the dollar that I lost.
I hear, but still every single week people come in asking for tax benefits and negative cash flow.
Yeah, yeah.
But then the third is in alignment with your values as well. And the reason that I bring that up is because I do talk to a lot of people that are heavily reserved about building granny flats. They're just like, I could never see myself living in one. I could never see myself doing that type of strategy. And that's cool. That's why there's other alternatives out there that you do not need to do that. It's just that is the path of least resistance. That is the least amount of investment for the most amount of cash flow return down the line. And but if you want to just go down more of a stock standard path, we've got the other idea, which is 3 properties to financial freedom, where instead of going out and buying houses that have granny flat potential, you just buy houses that align with those fundamentals that are going to generate incredible long-term capital growth and also have decent short-term cash flow. And by doing this, you're not pigeonholed into specific markets or specific properties just because you're looking for that granny flat potential. You've kind of got the entire Australian property market at your disposal. Well, the 13 markets that look pretty attractive based on history.
Yeah, and so that idea is, 3 houses worth roughly 600k each. So for 600k, you could get into Brizzy, you could get into Perth, you could get into Adelaide, you could get into Melbourne, you could also get into Hobart, you could get into Geelong, Bendigo, Ballarat, Townsville. You could get into like really North Sunshine Coast still for that, somewhere like Gympie.
Yeah, you can get into like South New South Wales, rural New South Wales, whether or not we love it.
So it works. And the only reason why we don't steer the ship too far off course is just our knowledge of history. Like historically, houses in metro or major regional markets have outperformed houses in minor markets by over 125% in the last 30 years, according to CoreLogic. So it's not that doesn't work. In fact, out of the 20 top performing markets in Australia in the last 50 years, not a single one's a capital city suburb. So,
but good luck picking that one regional market or that one little tiny town.
I'd rather pick one of 10, because there's markets that we look at that I wouldn't buy in personally, than one of, 10,000.
100%.
I just statistically will do better picking the average versus the outlier.
And once again, it's the path of least resistance. You go down to these suburbs in Melbourne, there's 200 to 400 properties that get sold every single year. It's like you go to these tiny little regional markets, there might be 20 properties that sell every single year. So your sample size is so much lower and your entry to the market is so much harder.
I was talking to a guy. I went to an open home with Jackson, one of our mates, a few days ago, and the agent was like, I've just bought this property up in Townsville, out in Gladstone, and my mind was immediately like, I know where we are, because I was there last time this was all happening, and there's a mining boom going on again. And he called it the mining boom 2.0.
He knows.
And Emerald, last time I was there, was in the GFC, and there were hundreds of cars on the main street. I'm talking like brand new Beamers, brand new yachts, brand new Hiluxes for like 15k on the side of the road. They couldn't get rid of them. So he's like, I've just picked up this 3-bedroom joint. It's in a flood zone. Insurance, if I go through a top tier insurance company, is going to be 10 to 12k a year. But I think I found someone that can do it for 3. And it's renting for $800 a week and it's costing me 350k. And I just went, shit, like that is exactly at his age what I would have gone for personally. I was calling all of those mining towns. Like, luckily, I never got a chance to buy one. But I get what easy money feels like. But over time, why buy there when you can buy Melbourne for almost the same price right now? It's unbelievable. But no one knows. Like, I didn't even know Melbourne looked this good until literally 12 weeks ago, like maybe 6 months ago.
And you got to do the research and due diligence. and figure out where the next best option, because I believe personally, and I think everyone believes this, that our job as investors is to purchase the highest quality asset that we can afford at that point in time.
That's all it is.
And so if we know that houses in metro markets outperform basically all else except for these little needles in the haystack over the long term, then that's what you should be buying. And if you can do that for 500 or 600K in the most populated city in the country, you know, that definitely aligns with the fundamentals so much more so than, you know, rolling the dice. And it's like, yeah, Gladstone's going to smash Melbourne over the next 2 years in terms of capital growth rates. Maybe for the next 3 years or 4 years. But if we start to think over 10, 15, 20 years, you know, there's a reason why the median house price in Melbourne is so much higher than Gladstone.
You know, and I think about this stuff probably too much, but I think I didn't put enough weight when I was, you know, 1 to 9 properties into my personal journey around risk management and building on, like, these are principles in Buddhism, Christianity, the Tao, Hinduism. Like, everyone knows the saying of, like, building the castle on sand, like, versus building on bedrock. And I think I didn't have the knowledge, skills, experience, advisors or mentors around me to know any better, so I just did what I could do.
Let alone the information. 2011, did YouTube even exist?
Probably not, I don't know. Probably.
No.
Maybe it was just starting.
Yeah, so you don't even have access to the information unless you go to the library and you find the book and then you read the book.
And I read all the books, like, don't get me wrong. But, you know, none of the books was sharing fundamentals from 30 years of Core Logic at that time, because Core Logic wasn't putting it out for everyone to see. It was keeping it to itself and sharing it with a few mates.
Very true, yeah.
And so this idea too is really like the 3 properties, the financial freedom concept. 3 600K houses, the same ones that worked for our grandmas and our great-grandmas and our great-great-grandmas. It's what works in Australia. And that is white picket fence with maybe like a different fence now, brick tile, slab on ground, 600 square metre block, quiet street, that you would raise your kids in if that was your financial position right now. Now, I believe that the 600K home in Melbourne right now should be worth 900K to 1.1 mil, is where I price it relative to Brisbane and Sydney. For some reason, you can get these fucking things for 600K.
Yeah, legit, like 18 kilometres from the city.
But like you said, I guarantee there's value in Adelaide that I don't know.
Yeah.
Perth that I don't know. Like
Darwin.
Darwin, absolutely, without doubt. You could do the same thing in Darwin for under 500K. Each of them rent, whichever market you choose. I like Brisbane and Melbourne. I'm just going to be very, very fucking clear on that the next 7 years, that's where it could be at.
10 years.
I couldn't be any clearer on that. 500 a week each. So you end up with $1.8 million worth of property.
Yeah.
Renting for 1,500 a week times 50 weeks a year, 75K.
Yeah.
Now we fast forward 15 years from now, $108,000 a year of income with 2.5% jumps in rents per year, and 3,740K worth of property.
Pretty incredible. Based
on a 5% jump in the values. Now, Melbourne has done, when we looked at 46 years, according to Homely, it's 9.5% a year. Brisbane's done 9.7%. So when we're saying 5%, we are being so conservative here.
And what I like about idea 2 is you end up with a higher net worth 15 years down the line as well, which feels good, I would imagine. Not there yet.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for
And you're in a similar cash flow position. You know, there's only $3,500 difference between the cash flow return 15 years from now. So, you know, I absolutely love the allure to idea 2 as well. And, you know, I don't know which one of these is actually going to be my portfolio longer term, because I'd probably assume I'm going to end up with a combination of both dual income house and granny flats and single income properties.
Which is exactly what I've done. And there's many people here that are like, whoa, 3 properties. That would have been really scary to me at 25.
A lot of people ask me, like, how? Like, I'm talking to the banks, I've got maximum serviceability for $700,000 right now. Like, how am I going to be able to buy the next one if they're already maxing me out at 700? Which is a great question, and that's why you need a kick-ass mortgage broker in your team.
Yeah, like how is the right question that all these people are asking. So how is it's absolutely brutal. And it's like going to the gym. It's like, what really is there to do with training? There's eating well, sleeping well, drinking the right amount of water, and just fucking doing it, like training it. And I went and saw Chris Williamson recently, and I love that thing that we talked about post, which is talking about it. Training is not training. Writing a plan for training is
Not training.
getting a training partner is not training. Like only sleeping is sleeping, only training is training. And so I think with property, it's just that simple. It's like save the deposits. It's brutal. I hate it. I'm in saving mode again now. I hate it. Of course I want to spend all of the money that I make to zero and just have a fun life like everyone else around me is doing. Yeah. But I know from 15 years of saving, it works. And I was talking to Dennis again yesterday with his wife and his little kid were in the office. And I'm like, he's like, do you hate saving? I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you hate budgeting more? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just pay myself a dollar amount per week first. That's it.
I couldn't agree more. And a personal story is like, you know, a lot of the people around me at the moment are upgrading their principal place of residences, and
you can accidentally get sucked into that.
I did get sucked in. I went and checked out this property that's so out of alignment with my lifestyle, so out of alignment of my stage of life, but it's where I would dream to live in 10 or 20 years from now. And I got sucked into the idea because, like, you know, obviously you end up being the average of the people that you surround yourself with, and all of the people that I'm surrounding myself with are doing these incredible things and upgrading their homes. And you get that little ego hit where it's like, oh, I'm doing good. I could do that as well. But then I did some meditation. I talked to my team, my family, my friends, and I'm like, I got to this point where I'm like, take your own fucking advice, Simon. Stop trying to do something that's out of alignment. Like, you're pulling yourself away from your financial freedom in order to do this. And I feel so many people do that. They get emotionally caught up about these things. They get, you know, they just hate the discipline and sacrifice that's required to actually get to where you want to be. And it's like, right now, I've got such a clear plan in place. I'm doing a duplex in South Brisbane. I'm going to sell half, keep half. With the profits, I'm going to finish the renovation on my home, buy a property in Melbourne that has the capacity to either build a granny flat or do a strata title subdivision on it. And it's
the
like,
market in 7 years on it again.
It's taking longer than I want it to take, and I'm so impatient, and I just need to realize that I just got to slow down. I just got to eat my fucking veggies.
Robert Kiyosaki said it best, bro, and I feel that too, because you saw how long I delayed my gratification for. At your age, man, like, this is the thing, like, I hate that people only come to listen to this at this point, 20 years into the journey. Like, should see the first fucking 15. Should see the first 10 when I was driving a $2,000 car with a fucked, like...
That you loved.
Yeah, like, I loved it. I didn't even... Because I love it. And I'm saying I love both. Yeah. It's very difficult when the average is older. A lot of the people that are listening to this, your average is me. I've had 10 more years experience as an investor and another like 10 years on the planet. Those things take time. A lot of people like looking at, oh man, I'm 20 and I'm hanging out with 40-year-olds because my mindset's there. Or I'm 30 and I'm hanging out with 45-year-olds. They've had 15 years extra to earn 200 grand a year more.
Of experience.
And had 20 years of experience of letting this home that went from 500 to $1 million, and then jumping from that home that went from $1 million to 1.5, and then the 1.5 to 2. They're not taking the same financial risks because it's like it's all leveraged time and money. And so I think it's really important. Like, the first veggie is save. There's no way around it. Save.
Always.
The second one is fucking earn more. Like, this is, I never ever get how someone will go to the bank and go and listen to the bank, which I did. Like, I can't even believe that I did. Like, I missed out on so many opportunities, millions and millions and millions of dollars of low-hanging fruit that I was ready for because someone said no. And I didn't ask the question that you just asked, or that client asked you, which is how. How is, what do I need to earn to do this? Now, there's so many people that I know whose partners aren't working or part-time, or they're working part-time. It's like, if you wanted it, you'd do it.
Well, I look at, Davo, prime example, right? Like, he works for Energy, well, whatever they're called now, but used to be Energy Australia. I think it's Ausgrid or whatever now. But it's like he sees all of his colleagues, and all of his colleagues call him, you know, the pretty boy investor that's just
He's a
like
good-looking guy.
super set up, super like made some great decisions. But I've watched him, you know, work overtime for his whole entire career to save that extra $20,000 per year. Whenever he gets an opportunity,
2 to 3 hours a day on the train or in the car to get to that high income.
yep. And every time shit hits the fan, a storm comes through, and he gets offered, you know, that on-call work, he takes it up. And the other day I call him and he's like, bro, I've just done 80 hours in the last 4 days. And I'm like, how? Where have you been? How have you been sleeping? He's like, I haven't. He's like, I just been hustling, but I'm going to get paid $8,000 for that 4 days of work.
400 grand a year.
You know, so he just has that discipline, and I think it's cool to hear those stories. And it's just, I haven't met a successful person that hasn't, you know, decided to delay that gratification, sacrifice, do the hard yards, do the hard work, because it's just a common denominator of all people that end up where you want. And Chris Williams says it's best. It's like the people that obviously told you couldn't do it then become the people that tell you that you're lucky once you've done it.
100%. And the thing about you and Davo, right, is when I was doing this as a 26-year-old and you were 18,
17, yeah.
17, like what's
18.
the difference? Yeah, about
7
9
years. So I think you
7
bought your first one at 24. I was 17. I just remember hanging out the back in the spa with you, Percy, and Macca, drinking beers, which I shouldn't have been, but and you guys are talking about investing, and I'm just like a little fly on the wall. And I remember those days vividly because it was just like no one in my world. I was hanging out with, you know, absolute drop kicks in Engadine at the time, and then I've got this older brother and his best mates that I look up to that are, you know, talking about investing and reading books.
And we didn't even know what we were doing because I was the first person that I ever met that had bought an investment property. And I bought it with my friends because I couldn't afford it on my own and I was scared to do it. And I think though, when yous were younger and then as we got older and I'd still come down to Sydney, we'd sit in the spa and we'd be setting up for like the biggest night in the city of all time, like as you got to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And then but before that, we'd be having meaningful convos, and you and Davo weren't like, oh, you're lucky. It was, how are you doing it?
Yeah, yeah.
I was not ready to do it for so long before I wanted to do it, like you guys, because you're at uni, you're working the jobs that we've got to work when you're building a career, and no one will hire you because there's no value to the market that pays big money yet. And I just think, how is the right question? And then it goes from saving and earning more. And earning more is a slap in the face because I know there's a lot of people sitting there going, I'm a nurse, I'm a teacher, I've got 3 kids or 4 kids or 2 kids, and I'm not prepared to trade it. And I'm like, I get it. That's completely cool. And there's many times my wife isn't working at the moment. Like, we could earn more money if she wanted to go back to work. You and I could choose to work Fridays. We could choose to work Saturdays like everyone else in real estate. We could choose to work nights, but then our whole value system would be twisted. So you and I aren't going as hard as we could, and we have done it when we needed to. But what I can say is the fourth thing is, regardless of if you're like ready to fully hustle or you're just like me, like enjoying the journey and happy to do it a bit slower, you need a clean plan. Clean plan. I talked to Dave the other day again, Dave A. When he came to us, he's the dude with the 3 houses and 3 granny flats in Sydney that I just ripped his idea and copied his portfolio myself. And I told him that. I'm like, dude, I almost want to cry. Like, I was like, I just am so grateful, and I never got a chance to tell you that for what you did. Because at the time I'd done 9 properties and I sold 7 of them and rebuilt based on what he'd done. And then it's funny because Melbourne looks like there's blood in the water, and all of a sudden Dave's, hey, is there any granny flats in Melbourne again?
He is, eh?
Like 2017 in Brisbane was like the true bottom. When he bought in Sydney was the bottom. And I'm like, Dave's the canary.
Yeah, yeah.
In the market coal mine.
Something's coming.
Something's coming. But he was just like, you know, he never earned more than 100K a year.
No.
And the guy that's coming in later today, Dave as well, printer, working in Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne, he moves. He'll move for a 10 grand extra pay hit. He's exactly the same as Davo. He works his ass off, every bit of OT he can get.
Happy to rent vest.
Can't a great year would be 80 and a phenomenal year would be 110 if he's working 2 jobs in that industry. There's just a ceiling on what he can earn. And he has, since we've bought 3 or 4 for him already.
Yeah, 3 with 2 granny flats.
And
so
he's
far.
bought another 3 on his own. And he doesn't hold them all. Like, he transitions in and out of markets based on opportunity. Like, he timed Hobart well,
and
timed Brizzy well.
He does it when he can as well. It's like, you know, we all have periods of our investment journey where the banks do shut the door on you. And
most of my journey's been the door shut. Has yours not?
Oh yeah, literally.
When can you borrow?
And the funny thing is, I was talking to another guy, Lachlan, who's going to sign up. We talked in March of 2024, and he was super eager and pumped to get started at that point in time, but went to the banks, shut the door on him via a broker. Went to a new broker, shut the door on him. Went to a new broker, shut the door on him. 12 months later, he decided to go to CBA directly, just walked into a branch and said, hey, this is my financial position. Are you guys willing to offer me a loan? And they said yes. And so had if he taken the advice of that one broker or second broker or third broker who are looking at 50 different banks, he would have sat on the sidelines for a little bit longer. But he's like, no, I am a property investor and I have a goal and I want to execute that goal. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to keep doing whatever I need to. And I'm like, how'd you do it? And he's like, well, I did. I did some OT. The missus got back into work and she pulled in a little bit more money. We saved up a little bit more coin. You know, we did what we could.
And ASIC finally stepped off all the banks, and now it's exponentially easier to borrow money now than a year ago.
Yeah.
And 20 times easier than 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And the timing has everything. Like, no doesn't, again, how? Like,
yeah.
How can I borrow the money? We can save more, we can earn more. Sometimes banks just change their policies in a day. It's like, CBA will go through, we don't want more than 10% of our new loans being investors. The next month, business is good. Let's just write everyone in. And then the month after it can close. It's like, it is constantly changing, but I didn't get that at 24 or 30.
Well, my opinion is I think people look at banks and perceive them to be like a government organisation that it's black or white. You have no influence over. But banks are private businesses. Banks are there to make money. And the way that they make money is by loaning you money and you paying interest on that money.
They literally create money out of thin air by lending it to you.
So there's so much grey area in the banking system, and it's just constantly changing. Like any business in the world is constantly changing. And so, you know, when people say, oh, how am I going to get there? And I'm like, well, when interest rates were at 0.1% and I was paying 1.5% to 2.5% retail rates, I bought as many properties as I possibly could. Now, I've paid for it. Like, after the interest rates have risen, got smashed. You know, I would have spent over $100,000 on extra interest since the interest rates have gone up, but I've got the assets and they've gone up way more than $100,000 that I've spent on interest. So it's relative. And so now the banks have shut the door on me because I'm on a single income and that's by choice and we've got a young family. But I know that this isn't going to be the reality forever. My missus will get back into work. We will increase our income. I know interest rates are going to come down. Our assets are going to go up. So the combination of things will open the door for us again in the future. And it's just recognizing that this too shall pass. Change is the only constant in life. You've got to be willing to adapt to those changes. And there will be periods of time where you've got no options. Go further, dive into education at that point in time. You know, read more books, talk to more people, start figuring out, well, when I am ready to take action, what action am I going to take?
You know, I think that perfectly links back to that third idea of like the plan. So there's many ways to get to freedom, but why not start with 2 houses and 2 granny flats or 3 houses as like a 15 to 30 year plan? Like if you get to 3, you'll be part of like 5% of Australians. And you'll be so wealthy and financially free in retirement, worst case, that life's going to be good. And not living off the little bit of income, but hitting retirement age and being able to strategically work with your accountant and financial advisor to figure out a plan of like selling a property worth $2 million and putting a big chunk of cash in the bank and deciding what to do with that money at that time based on your ideas and their advice, right? And so that plan is so important. And then the fourth stage after like saving cash, what was the second one again?
Saving cash.
Earning more money. And then having a plan is just I now know I'm only as strong as the weakest person in my associated team. So now I'm like vigilant about finding better people and happy to just move. If I'm the one asking the questions to my broker or accountant, they're the wrong person. They should be like constantly educating me. And the second I'm not educated, I'm moving on, because you need to grow. Like, the difference could be tens of thousands of dollars a year in advice, gains, rent return. Like, and so I think an ideal team is simple. Like, buyer's agent, I think, is really important if you want to do it really well. If you don't, obviously you can jump on realestate.com and that's cool. But we've looked at 4,222 suburbs. I know in every market in Australia the most undervalued suburbs, and I know each market in order in terms of most undervalued to most over right now. Some of them that people think are good are absolutely destroyed, and others that people think are shocking look phenomenal. And you will miss that if you don't have 60,000 pieces of data coming in every single week automatically to look at it from. And this is the first time in 15 years I've had it. It makes my brain so happy because it's so easy to see value now. A buyer's agent can do that because I was the one that went and spent tens of thousands of dollars fucking paying to get it made.
Yeah, exactly. And tens of thousands of hours doing the thing.
I'm 35,000 hours in now.
Yeah. And the funny thing is with real estate, over 99% of people when they sell a house use a real estate agent to sell it because they don't feel as though they have what they need to have in order to sell it for the best possible price. But when it comes to buying property, less than 30% of people that buy properties use buyer's agents. And it's just like, why is there such a disconnect between that? And I think it's because everybody's so used to doing it themselves.
Yeah.
And,
It's a new thing.
times have changed. It is a new thing, but it is becoming more and more and more prevalent. There are more and more buyer's agents in the market, which is sort of, has its pros and cons, absolutely. But, doing something full time for decades gives you an edge no matter what you're doing in life. And that is with buyer's agents.
A child starts gymnastics at 3 and by like 15, they're a world champ. They just did their 15 to 20,000 hours earlier. And that's why we love pro athletes, because they get there sooner. Kids playing soccer in the Premier League now at 16
Crazy.
to 20, and then there's 40-year-olds still playing as well. So it's like, but in career and investing, we don't normally start earning any money till we're like 15 to 20. And if you go down the uni path, you're not really earning good money until you're in your mid-20s. And so it's just like, it takes time to get the 10,000 hours up as an investor. If you're just doing it a couple of hours a night on your own or a couple of hours a week on the weekend, it takes time. And it's like, I'm doing kickboxing at the moment, right? 1 hour a week. Every year I'll do 50 hours. And in 10 years, I'll have done 1,000 hours. Which means it's going to take 100 years to get 10,000 in to be... Not even, like, that's when competence starts at 10,000 hours. Like, you're not world class at 10,000 hours. You're just, you know what you don't know and what you know.
Most people.
Yeah, you're competent at it. And so it's like, I think just recognizing that it takes longer as an investor, and you can speed that up with the help of someone else or not.
Wasn't Jimi Hendrix after 3 months of playing the guitar for 30 minutes a day?
And missing it every third day.
What's going on?
Exactly, bro. It's like, well, Jimmy had already put in the 20,000 hours by the time he was 22, and by the time he was whatever age he passed away, he was ready to move.
Don't give up. Keep going.
So there's that. Then there's the mortgage broker, the accountant, financial advisors, amazing.
But for this, absolutely need a town planner, absolutely need a builder, need great lawyers as well.
Property managers, tax depreciation people.
Yep. And that's really the full team. And just like every industry, there's good and bad and everything in between. So you need to find the right ones, word of mouth referrals, or people that have got the experience. I think that's always a good telltale, is like, what the person who's giving you advice, what is their personal experience? You could work with many accountants that have never bought an investment property in their whole entire life. So if you're a property investor, you shouldn't be working with an accountant that's never bought an investment property themselves.
Yeah, like, this is how I align it. Like, how do they save? Who do they have in their life outside of themselves that they're getting advice on? Do they already have the assets that will make them free? They're just got the time delay, or are they already free? And do I like them? Like, do I share the same values with this human being, or does this guy just want to get on the biz every single weekend and like live that version of life. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. I love getting on the beers, but I'm like, no, I want the dude that's choosing to like train and hang out with his family and hop in the what's your ice bath down to now? Like,
Oh, dude,
it's
don't even
cold,
remind
like
me. I'm
6
so over
degrees,
it. No,
8 degrees.
I would never. 7 degrees is where it's at every morning at the moment,
Like
and
that's
I
hard
fucking
work
hate it.
every day.
I hate it. It's like a full-blown battle every single morning.
Yeah, because
But
it's hard, but it's like it's how it is.
but it makes the rest of my day so much easier. But I think with all of that team as well, and then we can move on to the next part after that. But you don't need all of them for your first property or for your second property outside of a great buyer's agent, mortgage broker, and accountant,
Building
and
and
property
pest
manager,
inspector,
and building and
solicitor.
pest inspector. But I think a lot of people go, oh, I need them before I start the journey. It's like you'll pick them up throughout the journey.
You'll pick them up and you'll leave them too. Like I'm onto like, if I added all of the people that have been a part of my journey, the ones I left behind, there'd be 30 or 40
Yeah.
people within those categories because as you grow, you get better.
Yeah.
As you get better, like people disappear and new people appear that like hold you on the next step of the journey. But I think the fifth and final thing for me in terms of like moving towards this is just then at some point going, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Choosing to do it. Like I was training with our mum this morning at home and I was in the gym with her and I hadn't, like, she'd been coming over, but I hadn't been hopping in with her. And she's like, oh, that was just so much easier with someone else. And because we're cranking music, we're talking, like, it doesn't feel like training anymore. It's just a social hangout for her. Like, it would be like me hanging out with my kid. I'd be just stoked to be training while we're hanging out. And I think, you know, at some point you've just got to show up.
Yeah.
And it's going to suck whether you're at property 1 or property 15. Buying, the idea of buying is so fun. To me, finding the market, finding the part of the market, finding the suburb, finding the street, finding the home, amazing. And then you hit the wall, which is like now you've got a contract, building and pests, solicitors, property managers, tax depreciation, accountants, and it's like, oh my gosh, like
Insurance.
and then it pops out and it's like pain for the first year because the person that sold you it hasn't fixed these 10 things that
And
they
the
weren't
tenant
going to
moves
fix.
into the property and they pick it
Pick
apart.
everything up and then it sells money out and then at some point it chills and then at some point you'll get a run. And when that run happens and your 600k home is now worth 850 or your $500,000 house and granny flat is now worth 1.2 mil, it's like, oh, it was worth it. And it's like the delay between doing it, thinking about it, saving for it, and it working out is so long, but it's so short too.
The sixth thing that I would say is then just repeat. You know, it repeats, and the repeat might not be the exact same thing as you move through the journey as well. Like my strategy has changed dramatically from when I began to where I am right now, and I would say fast forward 5 to 10 years and it will be a little bit different again.
It's changed from the start of this year because you are getting new information and seeing opportunities come that weren't here in December last year.
That's exactly right. So you just got to be willing to, like, if you do it, repeat that cycle again, start saving, you know, start putting the money away or increasing the income to get the next one. But then when you're planning, you know, being open-minded and going, okay, well, I know when I last sat down to put this plan together, we were talking about, you know, property or market XYZ, but now 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, based on this new reality and new information, there might be a reason to change that, which is why it's good to have a soundboard, a mentor and a coach, somebody that you can bounce ideas off to make sure that, you know, you are seeing the gaps in the market.
And as someone who's done what we've both done, there's not a single thing that I do without consulting you and Crystal on and Hayden in our team, and vice versa. It's not necessarily that either of us need the advice because, you know, there's other things that we do with clients, obviously, that we don't do online, but there's enough like base level knowledge now to know what we're doing. But what do you think? Like, what am I missing here? Like, what holes are there in this strategy? Like, you know me as a human being as well and my value system. Like, am I stepping outside of what really matters as well? And there's all of that. Like, I was having...
Because we're still emotional beings. Like we were saying that off camera this morning. It's like, there is the ideal way of living this life. You know, I think the cat's out of the bag with that, but we're flawed human beings, and that means that we do get emotional.
Yeah.
And you know, when you are operating from that more emotional state, you're not seeing the gaps. You don't have a broader, bigger picture view. You're kind of more channeled in and
Woods
focused.
from the trees. It's
That's
like,
right.
I was talking to Em yesterday. Emily used to own a phenomenally successful cafe in Melbourne that she sold, and she's bought 5 properties with us since 2016 in Brisbane, and she's also got a place in Byron and a place in Collingwood. So 7 properties. She's not even 40, this chick. Just been living in, I just found out, like Uluwatu, Bingin for the last 6 months. She's now back on the surf coast, like near Torquay. She's like, I can see that she's just such a high performance person that, like myself, like yourself, like so many people listening to this, you can accidentally, like, you know, I can go too far all the time. And so she hasn't worked with us as a client for like a year and a half, but she's like, Ben, I just need to catch up. We caught up, we talked for an hour, and she's like, I had this to-do list of questions which we hit. And then she was talking about like selling a couple of properties to buy a $2 million house in Torquay that, if she was to leave Torquay, would rent for $700 a week. And I was kind of like, she's like, I'm like, what do you actually value? And then I sent her the values thing that I sent you the other day.
Yeah, I'm taking that down to Brokenhead this weekend, actually.
Yeah, and I said to her, and then she's like, fuck, Ben, I just really want to talk about property. I could talk to my like close friends about my values, and I'm like, but this isn't a property combo. This is a what do you really want, not what you say you want. And who's making this decision? Is it you now, or is it the person that you were 10 years ago when you set out on this journey as an investor? And they're fucking horrible combos to have, because no one wants to stop the progress. But by the end of the conversation, like, she was like, actually, this is a values decision now. And I said, your pattern, the same as mine, the same as every high performer, is change. And I'm like, the pattern in, like, since the day I've met you is like, I think you've moved 10 times. And I'm like, what's the purpose of getting a $2 million joint to end up, as soon as you finish doing it, getting over it and sliding out of that place? And that's a very hard thing to say. Like, I'm a good friend of hers, but like, not in terms of like her best friends that are with her day in, day out. But
also can become a bit of an echo chamber, and you're not in that. You're coming from a much more objective place.
And I was just like, I'm just her BA that helps her make money, and she wants to make money, really. But we have a relationship where it's like, if I see something that's going on, that a mistake that I've made, and someone else is going to make the same thing, I'm just not going to sleep that night unless I say it. And I'm like, I think this is a values thing. I think this is like, we've got to really look at this, because you can go buy this property right now, and it's going to put you under a lot of either financial ease or pressure, depending on which way she does it. But I believe now that it's so much more. Like, there's obviously the BAs out there that will go and buy like you 5 or 10, 300K properties so that they can rinse you through the business, and you don't hear from them except on the day that it's time to buy. But it's like, the way that I want to do it is like, work with 2 or 3 people a week and talk to someone like that I've had a almost 10-year relationship with now. I'm looking at her portfolio, we've made her millions of dollars now on what she's paid us. And it hasn't even started. Like, her properties are so well set up for like what's coming. And I was just kind of like, I think, you know, those things matter in the scheme of what we're talking about today. Like, if it was just as easy as go buy 2 houses, buy 2 granny flats, it would just be that.
Well, that's why this video, you know, the technical knowledge takes us 5 to 15 minutes to talk through. But then there's all of these other ideas that are they're less technical and they're more theoretical, I guess. And
it's the human side of the actual execution, which is the shitty part.
And that's why this podcast is all about that as well. You know, we're not just talking about the technical side of things. We are also talking about the theoretical side and the esoteric side, because like, knowing who we are and our experience and the way that we make investment decisions, if it happens to us, it happens to everybody else as well.
I've caught Em on the flip side too and gone, I'm like really struggling because she's a flat out baller.
Yeah.
And just getting a sounding board, like that's, life is better shared.
Yeah, 100%. But I think this is just the right place to start for a lot of people that aren't 100% certain as to where they want to be, because this gives you the freedom that you want in the future, puts you in a position where you never end up on the pension, you get to live the best life in retirement, but it's also a building block to leverage further and go into a bigger, larger portfolio if that's what you want, or transitioning into a different style of investment. But knowing that investing in something is going to give you more choices than doing nothing, start with the fundamentals.
And if you've got a plan to get to 100, you can get to $1 million or 300K a year or 500. As big as you want to play, like leverage up and down.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the important thing. It's like, well, that's so easy. It's like if you don't have $1 of passive income now, like maybe start with 100K.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, you want to go to 300K, cool. Like go to 300, but you know, progress creates momentum, like all of these old things that you hear. And I've loved today's thing. Like it's gone down a very different route to what I was expected, but I've loved it as well.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Wrap it up.
Cheers, bro.
Thank you.
G'day guys, my name's Ben and I'm the director here at Pumped on Property, and I just wanted to say a massive thank you for watching our content today. Now, if you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 12 months, then the team and I would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. In that session, we can talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and we can deeply educate you on the Australian market. And then you can take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each week. To book your session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that book your free strategy session button. But either way, we wish you all the best on your journey as an investor to financial freedom.